welcome. So today we're going to be talking about wayfinding. So specifically, we're going to be talking about passion, inspiration, and the true self. So I want to welcome you here today to the Roar of Love podcast. And before we get started, just take a breath. Arrive fully into the moment. Let the breath that carries you, let it be a breath that carries you into your center. Because the most important part of finding our way in this life comes from connecting to ourselves. The most important part of finding our way in this life comes from connecting to ourselves. So today we're going to explore the larger theme of wayfinding, which I'm going to be going into in more depth in the upcoming weeks, and then also the very specific topic today of passion and inspiration. So we're not just here for wayfinding. We're not just talking about like the maps or external directives. We're speaking about the deep internal compass that when we trust it, it leads us back home to who we truly are. I think this is one of the most important pieces overall, because when we're able to listen more to that inner compass, when we're able to find our way through the uncertainty that life brings us, then we are able to gather a lot of the richness that life has to offer. So this ability to find ourselves and find our own internal compass is a very, very powerful tool in our overall well-being, our ability to realize our purpose, and to make a difference in the world. So I want to say a little bit about personally why this is such an important topic for me. Because I wouldn't be here at this moment if it weren't for some of these components. So I wouldn't be here if I didn't have passion and inspiration, specifically how they showed up in my life. And that they were a passion and inspiration is a large part of what led me out of a lot of darkness, difficulty, and confusion. So there were many points in my life where I just totally questioned whether or not like life was worth living, what was the point of being here. It just seemed that things were so difficult and that the darkness was everywhere. And so I started at a certain point to just do things because they were interesting to me. And that might not seem like a major feat, but I was never taught that. So in many ways, I was taught the opposite. I was taught a lot of times to not trust myself and to go against what actually seemed right to me. So the idea that at this point in time, I was able to hear something inside that had me move towards just what felt right, what felt interesting for no other reason, it changed my life in such a dramatic way. And I've understood through working with people that many people go their whole lives, or much of their lives, like never knowing what that direct impulse feels like. In fact, when I'm working with someone, it's one of the things that I check, like, do they know that? Can they feel that direct impulse inside of themselves? And are they able to work with it? And if they're not, then we do work in order to connect that place so that they can live from a place of much more authenticity, of much more truth. So it started out as like kind of a shot in the dark for me. And then I started noticing that I was getting real results. And by real results, I mean I was starting to like myself more and I liked my life more. And in general, I was happier than the people around me. I was more satisfied with the choices that I was making. So I thought, there must be something to this. What is this that's happening? Why is it that this is working? And it's one of the advantages of being as, let's just say, as unclear on this particular issue as I was that I got to learn it from the ground up. I got to learn it in like really step by step with a degree of purity, a degree of innocence to it. What is this impulse? What is this step? What is this thing we call passion? I didn't call it passion at the time. I said, oh, let me do something that I'm interested in. And I moved towards that. But over time, I started to understand it as passion. And what is passion? It's at its essence, it's a remembering, right? It's knowing that, like, this, it's like knowing ourselves, it's seeing ourselves. It's like, this is this is me, or this is a big piece of why I'm here. But that passion is that moves us forward. But many of us have been conditioned over time to ignore or distrust this call forward. So we might be taught to value what's practical over what's soulful, or to do what's expected. And our passions can get buried underneath obligations and performance and all of the fear, all the different parts of life. And sometimes people were even taught that, like, just that feeling is something to be afraid of. That as soon as they start to feel the call of passion, they get that nudge forward, their response to it is actually to feel the rejection or fear or an overwhelm, so much so they can't even get into what they're being called to. So our true passion is not, it's not just a hobby or something that, sometimes we think of passion as like a fleeting thrill or something like that, or a torrid love affair. That's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the sacred impulse of the soul. It can even be quiet much of the time, but it always carries the energy of life. So we feel when we feel passion, we're being guided. It's not so much frivolous as it is directive. And this is very important. How many of us have been taught that our passions are frivolous, that they're what can be disposed of for the practical life that we need to lead, the responsibilities that we have. What about an option where passion and responsibility are overlapped with each other? What might happen then? What if our passion leads us to take deeper and deeper responsibility because we are so passionate about moving in a direction that we're willing to take on the responsibilities of that direction rather than them being in conflict with each other? All different relationships exist. We learn about things from many different angles. So if you ask yourself, what brings you alive, even if you can't explain why? What do you feel called to pursue, even if it doesn't make any sense? Right? And these might be the whispers of passion, but there's traps as well, right? So it can be, it's not always easy to keep listening to our passion, right? So we might be able to accept the concept, oh, yep, there's something to this. I understand I should do the things that I love. I should make my life be the way that I love. I understand that. But it's not always easy to keep listening to our passion, because we can be drawn out beyond what's familiar. Right? It can draw us out beyond what it is that we know. We can get lost in the distortions of it. We can compromise for a very good reason and lose our way. Sometimes we lose the thread of passion through making a difficult decision, doing the best that we can, and then just kind of losing the thread of it. So passion can be both overpowering and elusive. And so you can think of how many people call a vice that they have their passion, right? And so that's a way that it can be kind of overpowering, right? Or think of how many people are unable to find work that is meaningful, right? And remains elusive to them their whole life. So passion is a practice that we learn, right? And so it's a spark, essentially, or an ember is a way to say it, that we tend to and build in our life, that we can build it into the flame of passion in our life. And we do this by learning how to hear what it sounds like, or how it feels, or when we see it in our world. So we start understanding it. This is something I'm a really big proponent of, like learning the languages of things, starting to observe how they work in our world so that we can work with them more skillfully. We can start to say, how is passion helpful? How does it work? How might I work with it more skillfully? And then it doesn't just become like a quote card or something like that. It winds up being something that really infuses and inspires our life. So if passion is the fire, right, then inspiration is the air, or sometimes the wind. And so inspiration often arrives unnoticed. Right? It doesn't require the perfect environment. It can be present in a moment of stillness and beauty and nature, but also in heartbreak and grief and reverence. And if we're paying attention, we can recognize it for what it is, a message, like a nudge, a divine breath moving us towards something deeper. And it doesn't always come with instruction. It may only offer us a glimpse or a hint, but we follow it. And we find ourselves soaring beyond the ordinary. And it's as if God's letting us in on a little secret, and a secret made only for us. And so while inspiration can find us everywhere, if we want more of it, we need to be listening and inviting it in. We need to slow down, make space, invite awe. We need to cultivate the conditions which inspire us, that like where inspiration can find us. Using silence, ritual, creativity, and devotion are some of the ways that we can do this. I clearly remember some of the greatest moments of inspiration in my life all the way through when I was a child. I reference them all the time. They are my signposts in my life. They help me understand how it is that how I'm moving through life, what it is that I am sort of quote unquote meant to do, that I'm like to understand that I'm on purpose. So these moments of inspiration can be inspirations for our whole lives, or for a segment of our lives, or for a next step. Inspiration can come in all shapes and sizes. So passion and inspiration work together, right? So if you could say passion is fire and inspiration is wind or air, together they're moving us forward on the path of knowing our true self. So inspiration could be said to be the wind that stirs the flame of passion, because inspiration is often subtle or sudden. It can rush in like a breeze, or be like an awakening. It can awaken something inside you. And passion is like a steady burn. It's like a soul's fire. It shows us what we care about deeply. But without wind, even the brightest ember can diminish. So when inspiration blows through, and it can fan the flames, it can revive what might have gone dim. It can help us renew our passion, remind us that the fire is still there and that it still matters. So that breath of air that comes in and shows us, yes, this is why. This is what lights you up. This is the direction that you're going. This is what could be. And so the wind could be said to open the path, and the fire could give you the courage to walk it. So inspiration inviting you into new possibility. Look at this, right? Move in this direction. This is what could happen. And then passion giving you the ability to rise, to act, to commit. So the wind on its own might scatter your energy, right? This inspiration, inspiration, inspiration. With all people know that, or they know somebody like that, right? Inspiration, inspiration, inspiration. And it sort of scatters. It can like scatter the sparks in all the directions. But when it meets a fire that's ready, when that practice of passion has been worked with, it can grow, it can create movement, direction, momentum, it can build. So that inspiration, when it meets that prepared, worked with passion, can make so much happen. So the wind could be seen as expansive and this fire as sustaining, which is an interesting way to look at it, right? So the inspiration bringing the breath of life, it stirs the creativity, the curiosity, our longing, right? And the passion moves us forward. It fuels our devotion. It asks for depth. It pulls us forward. Together, we can, with them, we can expand with intention and create from a place of deep truth. So while inspiration can often be fleeting, it can arrive in a flash, a breeze, a whisper, right? Passion, when cultivated, is enduring. It burns in our bones. It lives inside of us. It keeps us moving. It's the spark deep inside. So you may get an idea, an inspiration, have a feeling, or be a vision. But when the fire helps us like stay the course, because it's like, that's the pull. It's like, yes, this is me. This is what I love. This is what I want to do. I'll stay with this. I'll keep moving forward. So we need both, right? We need just, if without the fire, right, or without the wind, without the wind, the fire is directionless. And fire without the wind risks burning out or burning up. So together they create and lift. They can create flight. They can create forward movement. They can help us find our way, right? So you could say that inspiration whispers, go, and passion answers, I will. So in general, the art of wayfinding is not all about the answers. It's the art of learning how to move without the map. And it requires trust, a trust in your passions, a trust in your inspiration, a trust in your inner knowing. It's also about developing discernment, learning to tell the difference between fear and intuition, between the noise of the world and the quiet truth inside. So to practice wayfinding, we must be willing to take like a step at a time, to walk in the darkness, to still move forward, letting go of needing to know how it will all unfold. So we choose to journey out into the unknown. So we chose to journey out into the unknown. And we can also know that we were made for this journey, that we have wayfinding tools. Here too, today we talk about passion and inspiration, guiding us, helping us stay firmly on the path. So it is this willingness to move out into the unknown that is the spiritual path. It's not certainty, but it's actually just an intimacy with the unknown and the fierce determination to rise and find our way into greater truth and light. So I look forward to talking to you more in the upcoming weeks about wayfinding, different aspects of wayfinding. Because as I said, this topic is near and dear to my heart. Right now, I'd like to answer a few questions. So one question is about, how do I know the difference between a soul's passion and just something that just feels exciting in the moment? This is a really good question, because this is one of the places that people get stuck in when it comes to like following that their passion. And so it can take a little bit of time, but there's actually a qualitative difference between when something is speaking on a deeper level and something's exciting in the moment. So outside of just judging from the effects overall, do we feel stronger and more in tune with ourselves as a result of following a particular path that can clue us in, right, to there being like that being a deeper passion, or not so much, it like it ends up feeling less than optimal, then that's a more obvious like external judge. But on the inside, there's actually what I would call like a tonal or vibrational difference between the two. And this is one of the things that really helps us in our overall spiritual development, is that we start to be able to differentiate actually between the tonal quality of one thing and the other. So oftentimes when we're coming at something a little bit too, you could say theoretically, a little too mentally, and we're tuning in or tapping in or feeling it less, we could say, just take something and be like, well, this feels good and it's exciting to me, and therefore it must have to do with my passion. What I would say is that there is probably something inside of that thing that feels good that could be associated with your passion. For example, even drugs inside of them usually have positive movement and excitement, connection with God, something like that. Right. So even those, there's a positive thing, even though there's a lot of other things that are less helpful. So we start to look at the qualities or the vibration of what it is, and see where see what the difference is, how we can feel one versus the other. And what I usually notice is that there's something that feels more vibrationally like, I want to say like me, or like a higher vibration, when it's my soul that is speaking. And that when there is something that's just exciting, it usually feels a little empty if I pay attention to it completely. And so that those are some of the things. Sometimes you can get like color cues, like if you can actually start to take different vibrations and be able to differentiate between them by adding more cues to them once you start to separate them out. And so it could be a color cue or something like that, where when your soul is speaking to you, it can sort of have a way of speaking to you, like a certain color or something like that. So that can happen through tuning in and through the development of inner dialogue and other tools like that can really help us differentiate. But first step, I would say, pay attention to the results, and then pay attention to actually what the difference are in the ways that things feel. All right, let's see what else. Okay. What do I do when I feel inspired, but fear keeps me from taking action? So what do I do when I feel inspired, but fear keeps me from taking action? Well, some of this can be designed for the specific fear and the specific circumstance, but I'll answer generally right now because that's what I'm able to do. So when fear stops us from taking action, and this happens a lot in all different situations, one of the things that can be helpful is to make the next step something that is small enough to be able to take. So in the areas that I have the most amount of challenge, I might want to be beyond where I am, but I'm not. I'm just where I am. And so if I can accept that and say, this is actually something that's pretty hard for me, I feel a lot of fear around it. I'm really concerned in whatever ways about moving in this direction. So now that I've accepted the fact that this is challenging for me, what's the right level of action that I can take? So that might be just on the, for sure, I'm comfortable doing this one little step. Or this might be like, this is just a little bit of challenge for me, but not too much. The easiest thing, if you're really stuck, is to go with the first one, which is, this is something that I'm sure I can do. And then taking a next step from there. So the next step would be something like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I'm either going to repeat that action or I'm going to do something else in order to take another step. And I'm just going to do that at regular intervals. Again, working inside of what I'm able to do in this moment. So if I was talking to someone and they say, I really want to start my own business, but I'm afraid and I'm not taking any of the actions, I might say to them, okay, what's one thing that you can do that you feel totally comfortable about doing? And it's like, can you write a list? Can you make this one phone call? Can you know what I mean? Like whatever it is that the person can do. And I would get just that and be like, okay, let's do that. Right. And then as you start to get success, even at those little things, if you can keep your mind from saying, oh, I should be further along or whatever, if you stop that, then when you take those small actions, they actually do build up over time. And the difference between people who do things, follow their inspiration, and those who don't are very often people who are willing to take the very basic steps that are needed in order to move them in that particular direction. And because it can be very uncomfortable, it can be very humbling sometimes. And if you're having a difficult time figuring out what those actions are that you could take, or getting yourself into a place that you're not defeating yourself before taking those actions, that's a good place to get some help or support to work through it. But really being able to find that place of taking action is very helpful. It's very supportive. And when it's done in line with your inspiration and passion, even small steps can be very, very rewarding. All right. Let's see. I've got a good one. I don't know if I have an answer to it. How do I deal with the discomfort of not knowing what's next? Such a good question. So how do I deal with the discomfort of not knowing what is next? So I think that there are many different reasons that we might not know what's next. Sometimes there are stretches of our life where we can't really see what's next. We can't see what's around the corner. So, would be a way to say it. And we just have to wait, not really knowing what that next piece is. And depending on the kind of your personality or how you relate to life, it can make a big difference in this particular moment of time. And for some people, this is much harder than others. What I think is one of the most productive things to do during this time is to actually focus on what you enjoy now. So what passions you have. How can you, it's like in a way you could say, if I don't have inspiration, what can I do? It's like, well, maybe you can work on your passions. Is there anything that you love or enjoy? Are there parts of your life that you could sink into a little bit? I always think about this when I lose something. One of the things that I do to find it is I just start to like clean and organize things. So the idea behind that is that instead of just being like, where is it, and messing everything up in my environment, you know how that can go sometimes, I just start to organize everything in my environment as I'm looking for whatever it is that I'm looking for. And then eventually I find it. Sometimes I find it, depending on urgency. Sometimes I find it, right away. Sometimes I find it after quite a bit of doing other things, maybe after I've started to move on to something else. So it can be a little like that when we don't know what's next. It's like, not knowing where something is. And that we have an opportunity to work in the present moment in a way that feels good to us. So I would say take the pressure off the not knowing. And sometimes that can be challenging because sometimes it could be like, wow, I need this piece of information because I need to decide whether I'm going to, take this job or whatever. But even so, if you give yourself that time and space, then you can start to just open, like relax into the moment. And this opens up the possibility for new understanding or new awareness to come in. So sometimes it actually allows for the knowing of what's next more. And sometimes it just helps you with where you are, and that you're enjoying yourself where you are. So like do a little bit of what you have time for that would otherwise be filled up by the things that you might be doing next. And so enjoying that time. And so many of these things, it has to do with kind of like to stop insisting that things are a certain way, and instead to start working with what it is that is there or what we have available to work with. So in other words, it's like we can always work to have more passion in our life, to do the things that we love, that inspire us, that call us forward. We can always work to those things, but not if we just focus on the one area where we're not able to do that right now. Sometimes we need to actually take the pressure off and just focus on what we can focus on, trusting that answer will come in when we need it, when it's ready, when we're ready. So this, I'm seeing this other question here that I think is really great to follow up on this. It will be my last question of the day, which is, how do I build trust in myself when I've made decisions in the past that didn't turn out well? I think this goes along with what I was starting to say, and that's why it drew me in a little bit. So how do I build trust in myself when I've made decisions in the past that didn't turn out well? I would say, what was the result of the decision that didn't turn out well? Okay. And the reason that I'm asking this question is that absolutely everything that we do in our life, we have an opportunity to learn from. And so if we focus on the part of it, well, these are the things that prove it didn't turn out well. And therefore, this means I can't trust myself, right? We're kind of stuck. We don't have really any room to grow. But if we think about it, that I have made these choices and I didn't like the results. And now what have I learned from that? And how can I now apply that in my life? And then every decision that I make is a learning decision. And how would I know before that? For certain, I did not know when I was 20, I did not know all the things that I know now. I needed, through trial and error, to learn a lot of what I know now. In fact, when I started this, I started talking about the fact that I got to learn things from with a degree of purity because I really didn't understand them very much. So along the way, that process was filled with a lot of decisions that, quote unquote, did not turn out well. But every single decision was the decision that I chose to learn from and grow from, so that then it became like fertile ground. It became a beneficial thing. That's how we transmute our life, the aspects of our life, is that we use this, whatever it is that comes our way, and we are able to turn it into something that we learn from and move forward to our next step. So the real challenge is when we are not learning from our choices, right? Our real problem is that when we've made decisions, we keep making sort of like the same decision over and over again. We're not able to learn from that decision somehow enough to be able to make a different decision. And there are a lot of different things that we can do in order to be able to do that. But that can be very frustrating when we find ourselves in a place where it's just like we've really worked to learn from our mistakes. And we kind of keep repeating similar patterns. And we're not quite sure why those patterns are repeating or what it is exactly that is going on. So in that, we when we see ourselves doing that, we usually need some sort of outside attention or awareness or something coming from outside to help us see where it is or why we're repeating the same pattern that we're making. And that's a place for a therapist or a coach or a teacher or something like that can help in that area, so that we can start to understand why those decisions are not working out. However, if we've just made some decisions in the past and we've learned from them, then we can have confidence that we're moving forward with new knowledge. And with that new knowledge, we're going to make new choices. With the new choices, there's an opportunity for something else to happen. And that just leaves us back to the place of we're finding our way. And that we're learning as we go, and we're building our capacity to create in our lives and to create what it is that we want in our lives. And two of the useful tools that we can use are this passion and inspiration, the call forward, a deeper place of truth, and the inspiration that comes in and says, yes, this. We can use those to help remind us what it is that we're truly trying to create. And then we can start to bring our choices and our actions more and more in line with them. And we can learn through other people, through help and support, through watching, through trial and error. We can learn how to create more and more of what it is that we want in our lives. All right. I want to thank you for being here and in this space where we're discussing passion and inspiration. So I hope that something in this episode sparks in your heart and there's a little more passion as you move forward. So I would love it if you would share that. You're welcome to share that in the Sacred Light space. And thank you for joining this time. Until next time, stay open, stay true, and keep answering love's call.